Good evening, folks. Thank you for joining us for the December 2021 workshop meeting of Media Borough Council. We're pleased that you're with us tonight, whether you are here in person or here remotely. We have, I think, a fairly brief agenda tonight, with the exception of a budget presentation. As many of you know, this is the time of year when we are towards the end of our budget season. Begins somewhere in the middle of summertime, and it extends through to the end of the year. Last month we passed a preliminary budget, which did not need to be in balance. This month we will be passing a final budget, which does need to be in balance. I understand that we've made some progress in that regard. Peter Williamson, who chairs our Finance Committee, is not here tonight. However, we have a very able representative for the budget presentation in our Borough Manager, Brittany Foreman. Those of you who have something of a memory of these things will remember that it wasn't so long ago that the Borough Manager was the one who gave these presentations. And in the past couple of years, for reasons that goodness aren't all that important, but nonetheless they are, our finance chair was the one who made the presentation. But tonight he's not here, so we'll go back to the old usual. So that having been said, our manager, Brittany Foreman, is ready to go. We have a PowerPoint presentation that will make all things, will reveal all things. And now is the time, I think, for us to turn things over to Ms. Foreman.
Excellent.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. So I am pleased to present the fiscal year 2022 budget for media. And with the hard work of the finance staff and certainly the direction and hard work of the finance committee, we are presenting a balanced budget this evening. As a high-level overview, the general fund is about a $10 million budget. It's representing a slight decrease from last year. The capital fund is at $4.3 million, a significant decrease from last year's capital budget of $6.1. The liquid fuels and rec funds are essentially static from last year, and combined together they represent about $14.6 million across all four funds. For context, I thought it would be helpful to look at history over the last 5 years. Just to orient you to the graph, well, council members, you have it in front of you in paper, and the audience can look it up at the screen, but just to orient you to this graph, the bar chart on the left is the general fund, and the capital fund is on the right. The left column is 2018, and moving along in time to the right, a light blue column, which is the projected budget for 2022. Our general fund is essentially static for the last 3 years, with a slight decrease this year, as I mentioned. Capital fund peaked in 2020 with a $6.2 million budget and has been decreasing over the last 2 years. The budget for the recreation fund has been static for the last 5 years. And for liquid fuels, you can see the large increase in 2020, marked by a dramatic decrease in resources from the state over the last 2 years. Of our four funds, I'd like to start by diving deeper into the general fund. About 70%, nearly 70% of our revenues are from taxes. Property taxes only represent about 17%. The Act 511 taxes represent about 50% of our anticipated revenue. Those taxes are mercantile, the business privilege tax, earned income tax, local services tax, and transfer tax. That's all combined into what's called Act 511 taxes. And the vast majority of the Act 511 taxes is actually the EIT, which is projected to bring in $4 million next year. The next largest revenue category is fees and services, and that's items such as parking meters and building permits and police fees and crossing guard reimbursements. Turning to the next page, there are a few key points that are important to highlight for the general fund revenue. First, this budget includes a property tax millage increase. The additional revenue was needed to help offset new service-related expenditures, which I will discuss in a few moments. And the impact is that it will increase homeowners' property tax. By our analysis, on average, it may be around $130 per household in addition next year. We anticipate a slight increase in the EIT revenue, and that's just based on historical trends. It has been increasing over the last few years. Notably, this budget does include, and it includes the first tranche of the ARPA funds, which is nearly $300,000 into our operating fund. So now if you turn to the next page, here's a high-level look at our general fund expenditures. Police is about 40% of our budget. Public Works, which is a combination of sanitation and highways, is about 15% of our budget. General government category is about 15%, and this includes items such as insurance and pensions and kiosks, salary for a governing body, costs for the tax collection. I will also call your attention to the fire protection, which represents about 7% of the budget next year. As always, turning to the next page, the salaries and benefits are our largest expenditures, representing about 50% of the budget. And this budget proposes a salary increase for personnel. Both the police and the public works are union employees, and these increases are written into their contracts. We are also proposing a 3% increase for admin staff. Medical and premiums will remain the same in 2022, which is good news. And these are our best estimate on insurance costs at this time. And finally on this page is debt service. I wanted to highlight that. That's about $745,000 a year, or 7% of our expenditures. So just a few key points to consider on the expenditure side. The fire company, I think you've heard Councilman Williamson mention this in the last several meetings. The fire company is transitioning from a volunteer to a paid firefighters in order to ensure full coverage for our residents here in Medium. And so council is supporting this by helping to fund 3 full-time and 2 part-time firefighters. This will cost about $700,000 next year and is an increase of 120% from this current year. Some other increases that would like to mention is IT budget. We're continuing to invest in IT. That's increasing by 80% or $65,000, which is due to some licensing agreements and some maintenance contracts for the general ledger system. We have also consolidated parking meter and kiosk costs into one line item so we can more easily track the true cost of our parking operation. So that looks like a significant increase in our budget if you're going into that level of detail. Donations to nonprofits continue to increase. The MBA contribution is budgeted at $151,000, a 20% increase from over 2021. Also wanted to call your attention to the police budget, which is actually a 15% decrease from this current year. And while we have some vacancies this year, we are fully funding all the positions next year. But the decrease in cost is due to the fact, a combination actually, of a couple of different things. One, we have retirements and separations of high-ranking and long-serving police officers, as well as there was a significant decrease in the pension, the MMO contribution for the police pension. Finally, I just wanted to highlight, while this is a small fiscal impact, I wanted to point out that this budget is based on the assumption of our health officer using the health officer for half the year and then going to an on-call contract as the county health department ramps up and takes over those restaurant inspections. Okay, onto our capital funds. Capital fund is about a $4.3 million budget. A majority of the fund is revenues are from state and county grants, about $2.5 million. Notably, the revenues, we're also using federal ARPA revenues on the capital side. And we are also utilizing $1.5 million from our capital reserve account. Now, the capital fund is used for large capital purchases. It's used for large capital projects, and I'm not going to list them all. They're up on the screen, but I did want to pick out a few items. On the underneath the administration side, we'll be doing open space plan implementation. We'll be doing traffic calming plan implementation. We're going to be investing in our website since it's a little bit outdated. And we are going to continue to invest in our borough facilities and several environmental projects. Here on the next page, you can see the capital purchases and the projects that will be funded by the police, for the police and the fire and code enforcement. And also our capital fund, turning to the third page on expenditures, our capital fund also continues to invest in stormwater improvement, which is critically important. And our focus will be to wrap up some large grant projects such as wayfinding, CMAC, CDBG project, and accessible pedestrian signals. Turning to the recreational fund, the rec fund revenues are anticipated to be $76,000, and that's the majority is a transfer from our general fund. Most of the expenditures in the recreational department are related to various programs offered throughout the year, including donations to youth sports organizations and subsidizing our summer camp for media residents. Finally, onto liquid fuels. We are expecting about $145,000 in liquid fuels funding from the state to be spent on our 2022 road program. So in conclusion, the borough's cash flow position is good. Our revenues that were impacted by the pandemic are starting to come back and stabilize. However, we are utilizing ARPA funds in 2022 to help bounce back from the pandemic. The property tax increases are enough to cover the new service-related expenditures that I mentioned. And looking forward, council really may want to consider monitoring the fire company costs, particularly for the long-term fiscal impact of this transition from volunteer to paid. Monitoring other municipalities who may assess their own EIT, because that will have a fiscal impact on our revenues. Monitoring the fund balance and setting aside a percentage of operating revenues annually to help build up our capital reserve account. And consider adopting a 5-year capital improvement plan, which we are currently in the process of updating. And that concludes the budget presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Foreman, and thanks to all who have devoted time and effort to putting together the budget for 2022. There are many who are involved in that. As I mentioned before, this is a many months long process, but we have some persons in the room who have been involved in this throughout. We have Jim Seaman, who is sitting next to our manager. We have members of council, Peter Williamson, who is not here tonight, who serves as the chair of the Finance Committee, Lisa Johnson, who is a member of the Finance Committee, and Brian Tausig-Lux, who is our treasurer. They're the ones who have been along for the entire gestation of the final budget. We'll have an opportunity for members of council to ask questions or make comments about the budget when we get to Mr. Williamson's portion of the agenda. But for now, we have the opportunity to invite the public to comment and question. We have two ways of doing that, as always, per usual, whether in person or by way of email. We typically do email first. The email address is comments@mediaborough.com, comments@mediaborough.com. Karen Rapino is not with us tonight. Usually it is she who reads us any questions, but tonight doing triple duty, Brittany Foreman. Do we have any questions or comments by way of email?
We do not.
All right. So we have the microphone that is available, and if there's anybody who's present who wishes to address council, please come to the microphone, tell us your name, tell us where you live, and tell us what's on your mind. We do not ask for the address in order to pry. We ask for the address because we're required to do so under state law. Mr. Rumsey.
Thank you, Brian. Terry Rumsey, 342 West 4th Street, here in the borough. Thank you, Brittany. That was a very good presentation, very clear. I'd just like to briefly address the $150,000 line item for open space plan implementation. I think Lao Su, the ancient Chinese philosopher said it best about 2,600 years ago when in the Tao Te Ching he said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And Keep Media Green thinks this is a positive first step. And appreciative of open space planning and acquisition of open space is now a line item in our capital budget. Also, we recognize there's like 999,000 nearly 1,000 miles that we still need to go. And, but we would like to work with the borough. We have some ideas on how there can be sustainable funding. But for tonight, I would like to stay positive and say we recognize that this is a positive and historic first step. And we're appreciative that it's in the budget and it reflects the public opinion in the open space planning process. I'm going to take my Keep Me Green hat. I have one question that's not related to open space, and it has to do with the line item for $497,000 for contribution to paid staff for the fire department. And I'm just wondering, Brittany, if we know what the average salary is. You mentioned 3 full-time and 2 part-time employees, and if they provided information on what the average salary, because those numbers seem high for 5 employees.
Why don't we begin here? Brittany, what does that number represent?
It is more than the amount for just the salaries.
Sure, health insurance and stuff.
It's about $300,000 for salaries. It's about $100,000 for the rest of their air packs. I think around $40,000 for a stipend for their volunteers, and there's another chunk in there that I'm blanking on. But yes, the amount for salaries is around $300,000, and that is to both pay them their salary as well as outfit them. And firefighters have significant costs for their gear that they need to get outfitted for. They did give us an hourly. I don't know how you feel about that, Paul. Do you want me to share?
I give like public information. I mean, I don't know, remember, I believe it's in the $25 hour
It's
range.
25 for full-time and actually 28 for part-time.
Thank you. Yeah, I just
projects.
wanted to understand the numbers involved with that. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address council at this time? We appear not to have any other takers, so we'll move along then to the borough manager's report. My goodness, the spotlight is stage left this evening, at least my left. Brittany Foreman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing else to report this evening.
Does any member of council have any question for our manager at this time? Seeing that there are none, we'll move along to the engineer's report. Mr. Mattson, everything is up is down and down is up, right is left and left is right tonight. That has everything to do with the audiovisual this evening. It has nothing to do with anything else other than that. Mr. Mattson, tell us what's going on in your world.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, the public will notice there's a series of projects that are under construction. One of the most notable is our road program is being installed. There are associated with that project 20 ADA ramps that are being installed throughout town to bring those areas of sidewalks compliant with the federal standards for the American with Disabilities Act. Within the next week or so, the contractor is reporting that the paving installation will take place. Beyond that, there will also be some associated striping and markings that were required or spec in this year's road programs. So the firehouse will see a series of lattices to try to facilitate the people not parking in front of the firehouse. There's a number of areas in town where we're doing some additional work. So that project is really in full swing. A lot of activity there. We have also been coordinating with the wayfinding contractor to prepare and review the submittals for all of the detailed sign work. And the borough contracted with Allied Signage. There's been a number of meetings, Zoom meetings, and correspondence back and forth about the nature of the submittals. So so that we are very true to form to what we spec prior to going to full installation. I'm also delighted to report that the Armory Project, we did a series of maintenance work this year, and we still have some work to do. But one of the first intentions about that project was to firm up any concerns they had about the roof system and about some of the masonry that was around the building. That project is substantially complete. The contractor was D&A Masonry. They did a very nice job for us. And I believe, talking to our tenants at Trader Joe's and the museum, the PA Veterans Museum, they're both satisfied with that work. So unless there are any other questions, there's a series of land development applications that are also in full swing. Some are in the process of coming to life, some are in life, and some are busy. So the field work is very, very busy at the moment. Unless there's any other questions, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Manson. Does any member of council have any question for our engineer?
Hi,
Please.
Kevin. Can you give us an update on the $50,000 emergency
Certainly.
project on Olive Street?
Certainly. So as council is aware, it adopted a resolution in October to permit the expenditure of $50,000 on North Olive Street. This project will include the installation of 3 storm drain inlets and a series of about 120 feet of pipe to prevent flow, which comes from the intersection of Ridge and Olive Street and sheets down across Olive Street and onto those low-lying areas in town. The contractor that we engaged with was a company, Nick Gardula and Sons. I have been in communication with Nick Gardula about his timing. At this point, he has everything he needs as far as plans, specifications. We just need him to relocate from where he is right now up to where he will be. I keep in touch with Nick almost on a daily basis, and I went down to the construction site where he's working right now. He's working in Eden, to get a good sense of how much work does he have, because I know timing is a critical issue on this one. And again, he's reporting back that he expects to be completed the work that he's doing in Eden this week. So he should be relocating to North Olive Street, he and his equipment, at some point next week. So again, it's a matter of, he's finishing up some emergency work. He's kind of a triage contractor, if there is such a thing, that goes around and fixes a lot of things. But this is what he's reporting. So we should expect to see his equipment and machinery moving into that neighborhood.
Next week.
That's what he said, yes.
Are there any other questions from council for our engineer? Hearing that there are none, we'll move along to our solicitor's report. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have anything to report tonight.
Thank you. Any member of council have a question or comment for Mr. Scott at this time? Seeing that there are none, we'll move along then to the mayor's report.
Thank you, Brian. During the month of November, we had 559 complaints. I'll read just a couple of them. 50 were medical emergencies, traffic accidents, 36, alarms, 43, assisting other police departments, 37, assisting the public, 88. All that doesn't add up to 559. There are a lot of other things too, but I'm just reading you some of the highlights. Let's see. Next week's civil service, we have 21 applicants for the be police officers immediate, and the civil service is going to test next week on the 12th. So we're looking forward to trying to get our police department up to full strength after this happens. Let's see, Veterans Day, on TV, we had a total of 3.5 million views, which is the highest we ever had. Channel 6 had most of them, 7 million. So that was some good publicity. At the Media Theater, they have 2 shows going on now. One is Rudolph, which is probably going to wind up having 2,200 people come in the next 4 weeks. That's a children's show. Mamma Mia is also showing at night and during the day too. This is going to be the biggest show we ever had. So far, $300,000 in tickets have been bought. More than 6,000 people have attended. It's expected to be probably the $1 million area that we will take in for it. So we've been advertising it a lot. As you may know, Patrick Ward was able to get over $1 million in money to get on TV and, for the borough, basically, I don't know how to phrase it. Some things I'm not supposed to say, so I'll just leave it at that. So I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I assume that that's the completion of your report?
That's it.
Any member of council have any question or comment for the mayor at this time? Hearing none, we'll move along to the council committee reports. We'll move from my right to left, at least that hasn't changed. Properties, Public Works, and Fire, Councilman Robinson.
I only have one thing tonight, and it's such an important legislative item of getting rid of kitchen equipment that doesn't work. 25 years on council, and my main job is to get rid of kitchen equipment that doesn't work. That concludes my report.
Well, there might be a question or two from other members of council.
If you want your
Yes, there
kitchen
are.
equipment, you can't have it until we pass the resolution.
All right, well then we'll move along to councilperson Lisa Johnson. I'll just step back for a second. It's been almost 8 years that month after month, you, Amy, Kevin, I don't know Kevin is he's still, we're still stuck with that. And Sarah. Yeah, so this is a kind of bittersweet moment. Try not to smile too broadly. Go for it, Lisa.
You either. Okay, I only have one item on my agenda as well. It's an annual housekeeping item of authorizing our solicitor to draft annual traffic and parking ordinance amendments. I'm not sure we've had many this year, maybe one or two, I don't know.
I'm not aware of any, but
Yeah.
normally they're just given to me at the end of the year. Somebody on staff compiles a list.
There's
Say
five.
it again.
Really? Gosh.
I said, normally somebody on staff compiles a list of these traffic amendments and just gives it to me in December. I don't keep the running tally myself, but I believe Ms. Foreman just said that she has the information.
Yes, we'll send a memo over. We added 3 handicap spots, took 1 away, and added stop signs at 3rd and Jackson. So I'll send the memo over to the solicitor.
There we go, we're busier than we thought. So I'll make a motion in 2 weeks for that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Lisa? Hearing none, we'll move along to Vice President Amy Johnson. Amy.
Just one brief announcement that the Media Farmers Market has now moved into its winter market and has winter hours, which it will be the first and third Sundays of each month, running from December all the way through April. So the new hours are 10 to 12. And yeah, it's a good opportunity to support local producers and vendors for the gift giving season. And that concludes my final workshop report.
Thank you, Amy. Does any member of council have any questions for Vice President Johnson at this time? Hearing none, we'll move along to my report. A couple of announcements and a couple of things to talk about. The first is that we have vacancies on both the zoning hearing board and the planning, the planning commission. So if you are interested in serving on either of those two bodies, and they do quite a bit of work here in the borough, quite interesting work, please submit your letter of interest to our manager, Brittany Foreman, and she will forward those letters of interest to the interested parties. A letter of interest could be your resume, it could just be a cover letter, it doesn't need to be anything too involved. So if you're interested, please submit your letter of interest. Item number 2 is something that we have, I think, one, maybe more than one person with us this evening. It is a zoning matter that will be looked at by our zoning hearing board at the end of this month. It's a property located at 405 West Pearl Street. Mr. Jim Buckler is with us this evening. I'm sure that he will orient us and all of you as to where this property is. This is one of those unusual months where because of the way the calendar works out, we do not have the benefit of the Planning Commission's thoughts on this zoning application. The Planning Commission will meet next Tuesday, so we are hearing about this kind of cold, at least for some of us. Some of us on the CDC have seen a bit of this already. Just as a reminder to members of council as well as those who are present, since this is a zoning application, we do not decide whether or not the variance will be granted. That is for the zoning hearing board to do. Our decision is whether or not we will send our solicitor to oppose the variance request. So having said all that, Mr. Buckler, I see you've got some pictures for us, and please let us know what there is to know about this variance application.
Absolutely, I will. And if you had copies of the application, all of these things were attached to your copies of them as well, so you would have them. So let me start by talking about the property, and the property that's involved is at 405 West Pearl Street. And this is at the intersection of Lemon. Pearl Street runs between Front Street and State Street, and at the intersection of Lemon and Front and State, that's the 400 block. So this property that we're talking about, Pearl Street is one of those small alleys that runs between the main streets. The property in question, and well, there's pictures down here of what exists. This is an old, non-conforming property. In 1922, the property was chopped off, broken off from 402 West Front Street and deeded, and it's been held in separate ownership since 1922. It's a 50 by 20 foot lot. And there is an existing house that was built on that lot. I don't know exactly when, but I'm going to guess pretty shortly after there. It's probably a 100-year-old house or near that, which is in disrepair. The house itself, in addition to being in disrepair, unfortunately, it encroaches in three ways. The side walls of each house of the house encroach onto the properties on either side, and the front wall of the house encroaches onto the right-of-way, actually sits in the right-of-way of Pearl Street. And if you look at this picture here, and I'll put this up here just so we can see it for a minute, in addition to the front wall, there is a small patio, front patio, on this house, and these patios are entirely located in the right-of-way of Pearl Street. The house is non-conforming as to setbacks, as to house size, as to all of those things. The owner of the property is owned by Marisa Caneda and her sister Mary Massaro. Marisa's in the back. She's a lifelong resident of the borough, lives at 408 West Front Street. And she proposes, rather than attempting to renovate this house, she proposes to build a new home. And this is the home that's proposed to be built. This house is 15 by 35 feet. It would create setbacks it would pull the house off of all of the side yards, so we have a 2-foot setback on one side, a 3-foot setback on the other. A 2-foot setback, which doesn't seem like much, but right now in the front, it pulls the house back out of the existing right-of-way encroachment. Because of the size of the lot, it's impossible to build a house. The actual building envelope after you is about maybe a foot wide by 4 feet long if you actually would apply the setback requirements that are in the ordinance. So in order to be able to build this new home, which is proposed, we need variances from most of the bulk and setback requirements, the dimensional and bulk requirements that are in the ordinance. I want to emphasize that for the most part, even though we need this relief, we're actually increasing, as I say, we're increasing the setbacks from what they exist, even though we need relief from the zoning ordinance in order to do that. We have also the plan for the house, but it's an attractive, tight 2-bedroom, 1.5 cottage type house that would be an attractive addition to the community. I want to also point out this is a situation where if I pick this up here and I show you the this is the property, this is Pearl Street. There are,
Sarah, can you see this?
No, I can't.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was trying to aim it for the.
I can see you.
Okay, so if this is Pearl Street, this is Lemon Street's out here. So there's a home, 8 South Lemon Street, that has frontage on this. There's a home, 400 West Front Street, 402 West Front Street, and 404 West Front Street, all having, actually abutting this property. Across the street, across the other side of the alley, there are 3 properties that are in close proximity to this property. And we reached out to all 7 of these property owners and showed them plans to get their response and their input. And they have all, and attached to the zoning application was the letter that they each signed, not just saying we don't object, but encouraging the zoning hearing board to adopt or to grant the requested variances because the proposed construction would be a desirable improvement to the community. All of these folks here and the one person across the street have sent us letters to that effect and are attached. So I want to be as confident.
You said one across the street, well, how many were there?
There's 3 houses across the alley.
But only one sent the letter?
No, I'm just trying to explain. So the 4 on this side and this house here have all sent back letters saying they are in favor of it and requesting the zoning hearing board to grant the variances. This home across the street here also sent us a letter saying that he is in favor of it, he thinks it's an improvement, but he has a concern, and I want to be 100%, and it's something we'll address with the zoning hearing board. He has a tenant who's disabled and is dependent on access here, so he was concerned about access during the construction, and that's something we'll have to deal with. But he recommends that the change would be desired for the new home. And the 7th home, and I just don't have to say, it belongs to the estate of Walter Strine. Mr. Strine's representative chose not to take any stance on it, but he didn't have any objection to it. He just didn't want to. But we've spoken to all of the surrounding neighbors, and they're all in favor of the application. And I think it would be a desirable upgrade to the neighborhood, correct a problem that's historically created 100 years ago, and eliminate encroachments that are a problem for the neighbors as well. So that's my.
Can I ask you, did you ask, come over here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's hard to tell with masks. We're like ventriloquists here.
Did you ask the people who live in the apartments?
That's the Strine property.
Oh, is it?
We didn't speak to the individual tenants, no.
No, not at all.
I mean, we didn't speak to them.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Buckler, we thank you for coming out this evening and explaining this to us. I think that's partly in recognition to the awkward calendar that we have this month where we meet before the Planning Commission will meet. Let's see. We'll take a vote, or we'll decide whether or not to take a vote 2 weeks from tonight.
Right.
I will, of course, report to my fellows on council what the thought was from the Planning Commission, so we'll all understand that before our next legislative meeting. But just kind of sum up, you're looking to replace the existing building with a new cottage-style building that is essentially skinnier and longer than what's in there at the present time.
It's almost the same size. It's actually a slightly smaller footprint for the building. If you add on the front porch, the new building would be slightly bigger. The existing building is 543 square feet. This new building is 525 square feet plus the porch. But it's very similar in size. It's just a better shape and eliminates the encroachments, and is a more attractive and a more livable building for the
Some might say a typical media property, more non-conforming than conforming, but that's how we
certainly
keep.
on this lot, if you look at the side, that's right.
That's the meat and potatoes of our zoning hearing board, I suppose.
Does anyone have any questions?
If anybody is interested in this, as I've said before, our planning commission meets next Tuesday evening. They'll meet in this very room. The proceedings start at 7:30, and there will be a full presentation of this application then. Thank you, Mr. Buckler, for coming out this evening. And thank you to your client as well.
Thank you.
I have two other matters that will require some action 2 weeks from tonight. Both involve extension of existing grant money or existing grant monies. I guess the RACP is a grant. Yes. The first of these is a RACP grant extension request that involves the 3rd Street Dam project. We received RACP monies back in 2011, and annually we have to renew the RACP monies. So that's what we typically do at this time of year, but we need to do that by way of formal action. So 2 weeks from tonight I'll do that, so that money is still available to us. Once the project is defined and we move forward with whatever will be at the current 3rd Street Dam site. We also have we'll need to take action 2 weeks from tonight to extend another grant. This is a Department of Environmental Protection Growing Greener grant, which we were awarded 3 years ago. Amount of $160,000 and change, and this was for a project to install some green stormwater infrastructure at West Jefferson Street. And Mr. Mattson, I'm sure, can offer a little bit more in the way of the details of that project. But from the reason why we're seeking an extension is because the initial design was not exactly what it is that we thought it was going to be, so back to the drawing board to some extent. And then the pandemic hit, and that slowed this project up as it slowed pretty much everything else. But Mr. Manson, now is probably a good time if you could just give us an overview of the project so that 2 weeks from tonight we and our residents will know exactly what the project is.
Certainly, Mr. President. This is a spin-off project from the 2016 overall Master Stormwater Management Plan that was put together by T&M and adopted by the Borough. So this is one of the first projects for which we won a grant. And this project also was done sort of in parallel with the traffic planning and design traffic calming measures. So elements of both of those projects were coordinated to do the implementation. But the idea is to use ideas in our overall master plan to install green infrastructure, things like tree pits, things like bioswales, things like rain gardens, and rain garden bump outs in key areas along Jefferson Street. The challenge naturally is, all these projects are retrofits, so making things work so that it's compatible with police access, fire, EMS, and then also meeting the goals of the TPD recommendations. A little bit of a balancing act. So naturally, there's a number of things there. But yeah, again, the first draft is prepared, and there were a number of comments, and it's probably your time just to have a little bit more of an extension of that.
So it is a good project, but we need money to make it work. So we will need to keep that grant money, and we'll need to request an extension. So that'll be the nature of the motion in 2 weeks' time. Otherwise, that's my report for this evening. Unless there are any questions for me, we'll move along to Councilman Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few brief announcements regarding Board of Health. The county is offering, I guess they're calling a series of town halls next week, and I managed to register for one on Friday. So that's supposed to update us on all the things that the county is going to be doing, I guess, to replace our Department of Health. So I should be able to update council by the legislative meeting on anything I learned from that. But they're operating those next week, and hopefully that will be informative about how things are going to work with the county handling the public health part. Regarding rec, I'm looking at my notes from the November meeting, and the Winter Wonderland is the next event that rec's putting on. That will be this Saturday from 12 noon until 2. This is when kids can come and take a picture with Santa. But I want to make it clear that it will be very different from the past in that it's pretty much come see Santa, get your picture taken if you'd like, and get your treat, and then leave, because you still have some, and then leave. So there won't be a table set up, you won't be able to come and mingle, but you can certainly come meet Santa. As I said, pictures can be taken, and the kids will be given stuff to go. There is cocoa and marshmallow, but kind of like do-it-yourself away from the facility. So we'll still be there, Santa will be there, we'll be happy to greet the children, but it won't be a linger event like it has been in the past, so it's kind of a compromise. At least we can do something, and kids can come see Santa. That again is this Saturday from 12 until 2.
So what does Santa look like?
What does Santa look like? Hopefully he'll look like a Santa. He's making an early appearance, so
Okay.
hopefully kids will be happy with Santa. Regarding rec, we are down another member. Unfortunately, Donald Trusty has decided it's time to resign after all the years. We did honor Donald by naming the pot lot after him, and we had a great ceremony back in the fall. But he has decided it's time to move on, so unfortunately he is retired from rec, and that leaves 3 openings. So if you are interested, please send your information to Brittany, and we'll be happy to welcome you in our future meetings, because we're down a few members and we need help. We have Easter coming up in the spring, and certainly could need some
And
extra.
the senior luncheon?
We'll try to do the senior luncheon. We'll talk about that at the meeting next week. We'll bring it up and see if we can do that in the spring. Relating to that, in 2 weeks I will be making a resolution to appoint Suzanne Ernest as the newest member to REC. And Suzanne, fortunately, will be there Saturday helping, so she's already earned her, let's say, her stripes in REC. So she will be there. But as I said, we are looking for more members. So if anybody has any interest, please send your information to Paula so that we can do that. I'm checking the agenda for rec next week. Actually, this is from, yes, this is previous stuff, but apparently the pickle lines were painted on, Brittany, do you know if they did both courts or they did just the one, right? That was what we discussed. So the earth didn't open up and swallow us, so things have gone so far. So I don't know if there are any irate tennis players, but the pickle lines are there. Pickleball lines are one of the courts. So if the weather's still nice enough, you can take advantage of that before it gets icier or a little bit more inclement. And I believe that is all I need to report for tonight. As I said, I'll have more information in 2 weeks regarding what's happening with the Department of Health and how things are going to go down. But otherwise, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Kevin. Does any member of council have any questions for Kevin at this time?
Kevin, I'm assuming Santa has been vaccinated with his age.
Santa has been vaccinated and boosted and will be, yes, and we will make that very clear that Santa is very well protected. And
I figured he would be. He's a smart guy.
yes, Santa is on it. Santa's one of the first, because he's very high risk, obviously, because of his duties, but Santa is very well protected, yes.
Good to hear.
Let's hope he doesn't get stuck in quarantine somewhere for sure.
He hasn't been to South Africa yet, so hopefully,
All right then, we have Finance and Library, which usually is Councilman Williamson, but Peter can't be with us tonight. We do, however, have Brittany Foreman, our manager, and as I understand it, she is prepared to say a few things that will address the matters on Peter's report. So Brittany, put on another hat and tell us what we need to know.
Okay, the first item underneath Councilman Williamson's report is the ordinance for setting the millage, the 2022 millage rate. The 2022 millage rate, and it will be 1.80 mils. That is going up from 1.41 mils, an increase of 0.39. And that will be before you all, there's a draft ordinance in your packets, and that will be before you all in 2 weeks. The second item, unless there's any questions about that, or Bob, you want to add anything?
Will I advertise it or will staff?
We have drafted an advertisement for it, and we just recently, like a couple hours ago, sent you a draft version. So if you could take a look at it.
Okay.
And then I believe Karen was prepared to advertise.
Okay.
The next item is the 2022 budget, general capital, liquid fuels, and rec budget. went through the presentation. I don't know how much more, what information would be helpful for you all. I could share what has changed since the last time you've seen it. I don't know if that's helpful, council members, or is the presentation?
Well, let me ask my fellow members, did you find the presentation to be satisfactory, or is there something that you want to discuss or get a little bit more information on?
I think it'd be helpful if you tell us how we got to the bottom line of 0, because the last time this report showed negative 390 something.
Sure. So there was a lot, with budgets, there's lots of tweaking. So there's a number of things that were tweaked, but the high level ones, of course, the revenues went up because we increased taxes. So that's the big thing, went from 1.4 to 1.7 million in property taxes. So that's the vast majority of it. A couple of other things happened that we changed. We had a new tipping fee from the county, so that was, tipping fees went from 50, I think it was 58 to like 70 something. So there was a much larger expense on the landfill side. With some recycling collection, we had, there was a change in that dollar amount. The MMOs, we got revised MMOs from our actuary, and that actually changed a bit. The police went up to 844,000, previously estimated 755. But the administration side went down, so the MMO was another big change, and I think those are the largest changes, really, with lots of other tiny tweaks.
Does anybody else on council have any questions for Brittany about the proposed final budget?
Okay. The next and final item is the engagement letter with Barbara Kane Thornton, and it is an amount of $40,000. There's a draft letter on Dropbox. You may have seen that. It is to complete an audit for the borough for next year. Well, to complete it in next year for the 2021 budget for the borough, for the MBA, for a tax collector, as well as a light audit agreement.
Agreed upon procedures for the
Fire company.
Say it again?
Agreed upon procedures. They don't do an audit. What they do is they look at the funding we gave them, and then they look at the expenses that go towards that funding to make sure it was spent in accordance to the way it was intended.
Okay. Thank you. And that concludes my attempt at Peter's report.
We did an admirable job. Does any member of council have any questions for our manager about Peter's report? Seeing that there are none, we'll move along then to Councilperson Dixon. Light shines on you, Personnel, Public Relations, and Historical Archives.
I have no report.
Any member of council have any questions for Sarah tonight? Seeing that there are none, we, as always, have a complimentary public comment and privilege of the floor. If there's anybody who wishes to contact us and ask a question or make a comment, you may do so one of two ways, or I suppose it's possible to do it both ways, although it'll be kind of tricky. You may do it either by email, which is comments@mediaborough.com, or in person. Brittany, have we received any email questions or comments since the beginning of tonight's meeting?
We have not.
Alrighty. Is there anybody present who wishes to address council? Please come forward to the microphone. Tell us who you are, where you live, and what's on your mind.
Robin Lasserson, 342 West 4th Street. I have a quick question about the budget, an entirely separate observation and a follow-up question to the observation. My question about the budget is in the public safety section. I just was curious, there are two line items, one called consulting service and the other called consulting services for $30,000 and $20,000 respectively, and I was just wondering if somebody could shed some light on what those are and why they are two separate items.
Give me the number so I can find the page, or the page.
Yeah, it's page 5, 1410.37 and .47, sort of 3/4 of the way down the public safety.
Yeah, maybe, it might have been renamed incorrectly. I know that one of the $30,000 one is for, they're going through, the recommendation of public safety is to go through a certain accreditation process, and that is for a consultant to help them with that. But it may be that the other one is named incorrectly, so we'll have to double check that.
Okay, thanks. My observation has to do with the tone and tenor of the workshop meetings since moving into this room. And I know, we've been through some changes, having the meetings in the community center because of COVID, and there was more room for social distance there. And then there was the whole discussion about, should we go back to the large conference room? Should we televise them? And I think the compromise was to move into this room because we decided to televise the workshop meetings, which I think is a great idea, and that's better in this room, and there's more room for social distance here than, upstairs. And I remember Amy saying when the tables were in sort of a U-shaped formation in the community center, you observed that you felt like there was more kind of conversation and dialogue among you. And for a while, these tables were in a U-shaped formation, and then they got moved back. And I'd just like to say, somebody who's been coming to all these meetings, that I've noticed like a gradual creep in the formality of your workshop meetings. And I don't know if that's because they're being televised, and so it's just kind of intuitively more performative, or whether it's because like this is the same room where the legislative meetings are, and that's more formal, and so there's just kind of a blurring. But I feel like some of the like more informal conversation and generative dialogue that used to characterize the workshop meetings pre-COVID has been compromised. And I don't know if it's conscious or if it's, what all the factors are, but I'm curious what your guys' subjective experience of the workshop meetings in this room televised with this setup have been, and whether you would consider any changes that could kind of bring back the more collaborative tone and less formal tone for the workshop meetings.
So can I say something?
Sure, thank you. Please,
So-
Sarah.
So one of the things you've experienced, Robin, this pandemic has caused an awful lot of change. So where we were not getting together at all,
Right.
getting back together is cumbersome in a lot of different situations. Whether it's our meeting here or where I work on the regular day times, I've noticed that there is just people coming back to getting together has not been the same, or as I remember, or you may remember. So that's part of what I think.
Yeah, it's just not as natural.
Yeah.
I hear you.
So, but we are flexible people.
Yeah.
I'm saying that, and I got one more section. We're flexible, and so we might just give a shot at trying the old way, and see if it really is a difference. What do you think?
I expect that we're going back at some point, knock wood.
Not until spring.
At some point, things will be safe enough for us to go back to the second floor conference room.
Yes, in the spring.
Maybe even sooner, let's hope, I don't know. It seems that the virus is often one step ahead, if not a couple of steps ahead, so we just don't know. I think that we have continued to be as collaborative as always. I don't know that there's any increased formality in what we do.
I do agree that it does, and it's a whole different vibe being in here versus over there.
That's true.
I do get the collaborative part, so I am looking forward to getting back and being closer together and being able to look at each other and have less formal conversation. So I agree that there is more of an edge of formality of meeting in here, and I'm hoping that when things get better, then we can go back to being more informal.
And Robin, I do agree with you 100% as well. And I do think it's the environment of this room, because it is the legislative, it's where the legislative process is done. And it's interesting because historically, this meeting wasn't called workshop, it's caucus. And if you look at where most caucuses occur, they occur in a more informal, non-televised opportunity for members of council and the public to have candid, frank conversations. I personally feel that a lot of it is, now we're on TV. And so we have a tendency to act, respond differently. And I firmly believe that the opportunity for a healthy debate has gone away, because this is a more formal presentation and more formal environment than all of us sitting around the table, kind of reminded me just a big giant kitchen table that everyone was sitting around and having, discussion and debate. This is where we come and make the legislative decisions. So I'm with you. I myself would love us to go back to the second floor and go back to non-televised, always open to the public. But part of the plus, I think of it, is that the public is next to us, not in front of us. I don't feel like a judge when I'm on the second floor as sometimes you feel here. So I hope very soon that we can get back to a caucus where we do have the opportunity and more the ability to have good, candid, frank discussion and debate. So,
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
good observation.
Well, yeah, I mean, and to be clear, like, I'm not necessarily advocating for a change in the room because of the social distance factor, and actually the acoustics are better in this room. So I guess I'm just like inviting some reflection and consciousness about it. And I don't know what the solution is on the television thing. I wish you guys could just like ignore it for the workshop meetings in particular. I know you can't do that in the legislative meetings, but anyway, just some food for thought. I appreciate your listening and responding with care.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else wish to address council? Yes, please.
Terry Rumsey, 342 West 4th. I just had a couple questions about the RACB grant, the state grant, which is the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program grant. Quite a mouthful, but could you remind me how much that's for?
$650,000.
Thank you, Brian. And at the recent Delaware County agenda meeting, Councilwoman Elaine Schaefer announced that there were negotiations going on between the county and Brummel's Lake Country Club. She characterized it that could meet the goals of the county. We know that the county had refused to sign a document that would have moved the construction of a dam forward. So reading between the lines, there's some possibility that maybe there won't be a dam with a road on top at 3rd Street. And I'm wondering, is the RACB grant tied to the current design of a dam with a road on top, or is there more flexibility on how to spend that money if the design were to change?
So I don't think that...
Good question, and I don't have the answer. But that is something we need to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else wish to address council at this time? Before I ask for a motion, Mr. Scott, do we have any items that you'd like to discuss in executive session?
Not on my end.
At this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Good night, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday season. See you next year.